Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbeville. Bob Gallery was just 17 years old in 1944. He didn't know that he was about to take the fast track from his home in Saginaw, Michigan to a foxhole on the front lines of the war in Europe. But that's pretty much exactly what happened when he was drafted into the Army near war's end. A 38-year resident of Bryan, Bob Gallery's 99th Infantry saw conflict eyeball to eyeball, as he puts it, and he counts himself fortunate to have come home uninjured, indeed to have come home at all, as so many who served did not. Please welcome Silver Star Medal winner Bob Gallery to Veterans of the Valley. Bob, you and I have known each other for a long time, from our days of playing golf over at Briarcrest, and finally I get to have you on this show that means so much to me to talk about your service in World War II. Thank you for being here and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you very much, and hope I do all right with you.
You're going to do great. Well, because it's a fascinating story, it really is. Like we said, grew up in Saginaw, Michigan, and talk about your desire to get into the service. You wanted to go into the Navy, but you had a little bit of a weight problem. Talk about that.
Wanted to go in the Navy and had to weigh 120 pounds, and I weighed 119, a little over, and 3 times was out, and I couldn't get to the weight of 120 pounds. So the recruiting officer said, he said, when you leave here, go up around the corner, and there's on the post office center, and there's a sign there that says draft board. So I walked in, told the young lady I was 18 today, and she signed me up, and that was it. And about 2 weeks later, I go back to the draft board in Detroit, Michigan, and I passed everything, and the fellow asked me what branch I wanted. I said Navy, so he stamped Navy on there and sent me home till they called. When they called us back, why, there was Army over top of the word Navy, and so that's how I ended up in the Army.
Well, and you said that probably the reason for that was because that was the time that they were planning the final push. D-Day was occurring, and they were planning the final push through Europe, so they needed infantry guys on the ground in Europe.
Yes, they needed bodies, so it didn't matter what I weighed.
Right, right. Well, I was going to mention, I don't understand, because I can eat one candy bar and gain a half a pound. I don't understand why you had trouble gaining that. It's never a problem for me to do that. So you busted Detroit for your physical, and you passed everything, like you said. You went to basic at Camp Robinson in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Little Rock, Arkansas. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was basic like? What did you learn? Obviously, not what you needed to prepare you for where you were about to go.
Well, mainly defense, to protect yourself and your buddies, and tried to teach us how to dig a hole, but in Arkansas, it was like this tabletop, and you knock the dust off, and that was about the end of our foxhole.
Right.
And then but anyway, we joked about that over the years, and it was quite an experience. And when we finished our basic, which they put us through quite a drill for, I can't remember how long it was. It was like, I'm going to say 6 weeks or something like that. It was a very fast program, and fortunately I made it through. Being at my low weight, why sometimes they had us pitching big logs back and forth to each other in training, and when you're on the tail end of it, well, it was kind of tough at times.
Exactly.
But anyway, I made it through the training and survived, which was the main part, and my determination is wanting to be in the service, so I worked hard at it.
And you were there. But again, like we talked about the fast track, you were on a train to New Jersey to get your uniforms, and before you knew it, you were on the Queen Elizabeth and headed to the war in Europe.
That's right. We left Arkansas on a troop train and went into New Jersey, and Camp Kilmer, I believe was the name of it. But anyway, we were equipped with everything we had to have to take care of the weather that they had over there. It was 2-3 foot of snow on the level and so on and so forth. Very cold, kind of like our north part of the country here in our United States. But we were issued everything, and then when we got to England, we were on a troop train again and crossed the country, and then loaded on a boat across the English Channel, And then from there we got onto a troop train and then ended up in Belgium. And then in trucks and hauled us up to the front line directly into Foxholes. And that was it.
When were you assigned to the 99th? When did you know that was that during basic or when you got to?
That's when we arrived there at the front line.
When you arrived at the front lines, that's when you were assigned to the
That's when we were
99th.
assigned.
So when you were going across, you didn't know exactly what your mission was going to be, what your tour was going to be, that you were going to be a ground soldier in Foxholes.
Yeah, had no idea at the time.
Right.
We were put right up in the front line, and we couldn't come out of the Foxhole at night. We came out at night. We couldn't go out in the daytime
Right.
because they had snipers all over, and then they liked to aim at that steel helmet.
Right. So were you pretty quickly into this routine? Were you involved in conflict pretty early on as far as being shot at and it was the real deal?
Probably within, golly, that's so long now, I can't remember.
Sure.
Within 24 hours, we were already going on patrols and going
Right.
right into the middle through the Germans.
And this
lines.
foxhole was the first foxhole the first foxhole you dug is one you had to dig because
Well, this one was already dug. We didn't have to dig this one.
I see.
We just crawled in this one.
Right.
But if you can imagine the size of this table right here,
Mm-hmm.
this was about the width of a foxhole.
Right.
We could stretch out. Matter of fact, my buddy was about your size, Tom,
Uh-huh.
and
So there wasn't much room for you.
so there wasn't much room. Our sleeping bags were here, and we had a step here, and then up, and we would change shifts every 2 hours because of the cold weather,
Right.
and so we were up here where we could see. We had a spot here where we could look out toward the front line of where they might come at us. And so in 2 hours, every 2 hours, we'd swap and we'd rub each other's feet, and then we'd crawl in the sleeping bag and sleep for maybe 2 hours, and then we'd change again. And that's what took place during the night.
This
Well-
was the winter of 1944.
That was in
Right.
44.
So this was during the time of the Battle of the Bulge, and we've all heard about the bulge and the weather and the snow. And so you were talking about you had to rub each other's feet just to keep the circulation, and those who didn't, many of them lost their feet to frostbite.
Right. Very
Right?
true. Very true. And it was a sad thing when you saw a young man or a person when his feet were frozen and they started to rot.
Right. Right.
And then they were shipped off to the medics, and we never saw them again after that.
Right. Were you aware that of what your unit was trying to accomplish, that this was the final push, that this was the final push to try to get Germany to surrender to stop the war in Europe?
Not right away. We weren't. We were defending
Right.
them coming into Belgium, but that was sort of the end of the push of the Germans as far as they were able to get. And then from there on, we were pushing them back.
Right.
And how much territory we covered, I don't have any idea. It could have been 10 miles, it could have been 1,000 miles, but
Right.
we kept on the move.
Most of the veterans that I've talked to that served in Europe, when they talk about the Germans, they talk about them in terms of that these were young kids too that didn't anymore want to be involved in war than the Americans did. Is that how you?
A lot of them
found
were
them?
at the time where we were in this particular area. When we started out, we had pretty much professional soldiers that we were dealing with at that time.
Right.
But as the time went on and we kept moving and coming into different communities, they were replacing personnel with whoever they could get.
Right.
Whoever was warm
And they would get younger, I
Get
guess.
younger,
Yeah, they
yeah.
would get younger and more afraid, and sort of with the same mentality that you had. You know, what am I doing here? And
pretty much
let's
the
get this
same
thing over with. You talked about the patrols and how you'd go out and patrol about once a week. And talk about you talked about one particular patrol where you just passed within feet of a tent that was full of Germans, and they never suspected or heard you.
They were talking and telling stories, I guess, and they didn't hear us go by them.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked right real close, within 2-3 feet of their tent. And fortunately, we got by, and we came back after we went to the area that we were assigned to go to inspect. Why, then we turned around and come right back by them again, and then came back to our original foxhole.
There'd be about 20 of you, right?
It's about, yeah, there's 15 or 20 of us. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't know why we had that size of a unit, but usually they would come in and take a squad out of your platoon, and so we all went. And if we got into an encounter, I guess we had enough of us there. Hopefully, we could take care of ourselves.
Right. Right.
That was pretty much the theory. But we went on these patrols right away, and it was just. At first, we didn't even have any idea what we were going to do or where we were going.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite, you didn't have time to get scared. I guess maybe if I was older and had a family back here with children and so forth, then that would be different. But my responsibilities when I left the United States, then I was still, just me.
Right, right. Well, like 17 and 18-year-olds, they think they're bulletproof, and
there you
you thought the same thing. But still, I'm thinking, here you are, 17, 18 years old, and you're a long way from Saginaw, Michigan, aren't you?
A long ways. Yeah, that's very true.
Talk about, you said that there were conflicts, there were resistance that you ran into from time to time. You described it as sometimes eyeball to eyeball. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, when we were going through the forest, after we went on the move, we didn't go back to our original overnight foxhole. But when we got moving, why we'd run into situations where could be right where that young lady's standing. Could be a place where they bed down, and all of a sudden one of them would pop out and point a rifle at you, and or he would say, well, he didn't act like he wanted to kill us, but and it was just different things like that would happen, and then young kids, snipers would shoot at us when we kind of got out in the open a little bit. But as we were going through the forest, so that was like, for instance, all of this mechanic stuff here, you'd have to crawl over it and so on and so forth. Then you're in 2-3 foot of snow.
Right. And
then your buddy gets shot, which mine did.
Yeah, talk about that. He was your friend that was hauling your ammo, right? You were carrying
I was carrying the BAR.
BAR.
He was carrying the ammunition.
Right.
He got shot and took his shoulder practically off. His arm was just hanging, but then I had to go on without him. I didn't have any help after that.
Right.
For a while anyway. But encounters like that, then you start to think, well, what am I into here?
Right.
But we had to defend each other, was the whole theory when we encountered something like that.
Now there were patrols, which you said you went out, and I guess the purpose of those was to go out and find the enemy and to come back and sort of report
That's right.
where they were. But then there was the push, and you talk a lot about that, especially when you joined up with General Patton, who was on your left flank, and he was pretty much directing the push. And when we say push, we really mean push. You all moved a long way in a little amount of time, and in bad weather also.
Rain or shine.
Rain or shine.
But that was, and we would move. We were scheduled to go, like, say 5 miles or 30 miles. It didn't matter what it was. Everything you kept going. We had our tanks and our equipment with us, and we had to just keep moving. If you didn't, you might get ran over by a tank. But then we'd jump up on top sometimes. If they went too fast, we'd jump up on the tank and get a free ride.
Right.
And get a little rest.
Yeah.
But when at that time when we got out of the forest, we kept on the move real. And when we got to the Rhine River, why we slowed down somewhat there. I think we had about a half a day rest because we had to get everything prepared up front. The engineers got in there and we're putting pontoon bridges across the river and stuff like that. And then when they got pretty much things were secured, then we started walking across the bridge, the railroad bridge. And that was an experience because there were all through the hillside, and the backside was just a big hill, and we were going into a dark tunnel, which we didn't enter the tunnel, but we had to cross the bridge to get the land and then go off to the front. We had a 2-mile front the first night.
Right.
And we were shot at, but fortunately we had a few boys hit, but I was lucky. I was lucky through the whole war. I didn't get.
You really got nothing more than just some little bit of shrapnel on your cheek that drew a little bit of blood, but other than that,
we had that.
Yeah.
And then one time we had taken this. We had not taken the village. We were outside of it, and we bed down in a tree area, and they were throwing mortars at us, and one lit over here about maybe that far as that stand, and fortunately it was a dud.
Wow.
And we could hear them coming down. And but it was a dud, and we lived through that one. I'll tell you, that was, if that would have went off, I wouldn't be here today talking to you.
Absolutely. You talked about seeing the line of foxholes and the strafing by Bed Check Charlie and how jumping into the foxholes full of water. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's after we went back, after we were relieved.
By the 69th.
But we called him Bed Check Charlie. Every midnight he would come through and he would strafe those. He'd shoot ammo, from the plane.
Yeah. Just come like 50 feet above your head, right?
He'd just come in and strafe right on through. And of course we didn't, when he was going over, we didn't stick our head out of the foxhole at all. And but that was a warning that we knew was going to happen every night. So we just respected him.
Talk about, as I mentioned in the introduction, you were awarded the Silver Star Medal. It's a fascinating story. It was concerning a city that you all thought that you had pretty much cleaned out, but it turned out that you hadn't. Sort of take us from why you had gone out on your own patrol by yourself and what you found.
Well, we had taken the city, and we had all the boys up front, and we pretty much secured the area. And so Lieutenant Brown asked me to go back to the rear echelon and let them know we had the city secured. So I'm on my way back, and this lady came out of this building and told me that there were German soldiers in the cellar. And I said, no, we've cleaned the city out. There's nothing here. So she grabbed me by the arm and she pulled me, asked me to go in. So I felt it was all right. And I'm all by myself and not thinking, well, what's going on? But anyway, we walk into this big building here, like he had a hallway going all the way down to that back wall. She takes me into there, and she's got a hold of me all the time. She said Germans are in it. So we get in this room, and she said, she said, they're down there. And I'm looking through just a dark hole. So I hollered in German for him to come out. And there wasn't a sound, absolutely dead silent. So I let a round off of my rifle down in there, and it sounded like a big old cannon in that building. But anyway, they started coming out. And as they did, then I'm backing out. And they kept coming. I go, where in the world? Anyway, when I got them up to this room, and then there was a small hallway. We had the entrance to get into that. We had to get out that to get to the street, and they got right up to the edge of that door, and they had captured a French soldier,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in front of all of them, and I couldn't tell, and they stopped, and they wouldn't. I asked them to keep coming, and they wouldn't. So I shot into the wall, and I caught this fellow in the leg, and he went down like, the building fell on him, screaming bloody murder. And anyway, from that, then they came out. So I backed out, and I got them in the street, and I just kept. They kept coming. Why? After we got them all out there standing, we had 38 soldiers. And everybody said, "Well, how did we miss them?"
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, they were hiding down there in that cellar, and we got them out. And then I got some help after
Right.
that. Fortunately, I didn't have any real problem with them trying to shoot me or anything like that. But I never went back into the cellar. Someone else did. And what we found, to this day, I don't have any idea what was in there.
Right.
Ammo, guns, or what.
Exactly.
But I was lucky. They could have shot me just as like we're right here now, just walking to pull
Yeah.
the trigger, and I wouldn't be here. Because there was nobody around because I had 3 shots that I'd fired.
Mm-hmm.
And then pretty soon, Lieutenant Brown, he came himself too, but some other people came and helped me.
Right. And for that, you received the Silver Star for that action. And talk about, you said one time moving with Patton, you marched 37 miles in one day.
37 miles after we crossed the Vermoggen River,
Mm-hmm.
Vermoggen Bridge.
Right.
We had a 2-mile front the first night. The next morning, we were ordered to get going, and of course our head commander up there, he knew where we were going, so on and so forth. And we went 37 miles on one box of K rations. And our kitchen, was with us all the time. They couldn't keep up with us and didn't have time to cook a hot meal for us.
Right.
But they tried to give us a hot meal every day if it's possible.
Right. Right.
But
Eventually, you moved into Czechoslovakia. We're getting down near to the end, and the war ended in Europe. And those that had been there less than a year were assigned to come back to the States. You joined the 2nd Infantry Division at this time.
Yeah, we were reassigned to the 2nd Infantry Division.
Right.
And we waited, I think it was about 30 days, and then we were sent back to the United States.
Right. You said to Bastrop, to Camp Swift. That's where the staging area was, like so many soldiers who came from Europe. You were being prepared and being staged to move on to Japan for what people assumed would be a ground war in Japan.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what took place. And while we were at that location, about 6 of us got together, and we were all about the same age, and we decided we'd stay in the service.
Mm-hmm.
But that was after we found out the war was over, though.
Right.
And so we all shipped over for 3 years, and I stayed in, and from there we went to Washington State, Camp Fort Lewis,
Right.
and stayed up there till come time for me to get discharged out of the service in 51, I think, is when I was legally discharged.
Right. Right. So about a 6-year hitch in the Army, which included the better part of a year in Europe.
In Europe, yeah.
In Europe. Of course, after you got out, you say you went to San Diego.
Moved to San Diego.
Moved to San Diego,
Mhm.
and you started selling cars there.
Started selling cars. And then a good friend of ours is the Datsun automobile became available in the United States.
Right.
And he was one of the representatives signing up dealers. And a friend of mine that is deceased now, but had a dealership in Houston, and I ended up here.
Right.
And it was up here for about almost 18 years.
Right. 1972, you opened your dealership here
Mhm.
in Bryan College Station.
Right.
People remember Gallery Nissan, and so in '72 you opened it, and you've been retired for about how long now?
Since '89.
Since 1989.
Well, actually, about '91, night somewhere's in there.
Right.
Time
Right.
we closed everything out.
Your family, you have a daughter who lives in Rhode Island, and
Rhode
you say
Island.
she's very happy there. She doesn't want to come to Texas, right?
She says this is paradise. I remember the heat in Texas, and I don't want to come back.
Bob was one of the 100 or so veterans who recently went to Washington with us for the Lone Star Honor Flight, and I know that was a great experience that I got to share with the veterans. And as a veteran yourself, I know you had a great time that day.
That was a great experience, and I'd been back to D3 a couple of times, but I didn't get to see the territory that we did when we went through everything there that day.
Right.
That memorial is something else, and everything else, all the different places we got to see.
Right.
And I might take my wife back someday and show her.
It would be a great thing.
But
It'd be a great thing to do.
It was a great thing. I met a couple of fellows that lived right here in the area.
Right.
That was in the same outfit that I was in, the 99th.
Exactly.
And
So when you look back on it, your service, it wasn't a long service by a lot of standards, but again, you do count yourself very fortunate to have come home when, like we said, so many did not come home.
That's right. It's just an experience that I wouldn't care to go through again, but I wouldn't take anything for it.
Well, we thank you for your service. We appreciate it. We're out of time.
Thank you.
And thank you, Bob, for being here and telling your story.
Thank you.
Some 66 years later, Bob Gallery recounts his 6-year hitch in the Army with amazing clarity. But that first year, a teenager, following General Patton in the final push through Germany, could never easily be forgotten. Bob has one daughter, and he and Lois have been married for 37 years as they enjoy their much-deserved retirement in Bryan. We salute Bob Gallery for his service, as we do all veterans. I'm Tom Turbeville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.